The NFL schedule is out. The Bears don't play any consecutive home games or road games this year. It's home away, home away. We should spend the whole time talking about that. That's so weird. But we have others. Oh, and also the Raiders are on Monday Night Football in week 1 for the third time in 4 seasons. This is what I'm looking at when I look at the schedule, but also plenty of fantasy analysis. Like last year, I talked about the players who had the hardest cornerback matchups, like DK Metcalf and Stephon Diggs. So that stuff's really important right now. Adam Azer, Jamie Eisenberg, and Dave Richard on 9:45 p.m. on Wednesday night, late night podcasting here. Dave, how important is the schedule release for you in terms of fantasy?
This is what can provide some tiebreakers for you during the draft, where you might be comparing player A and player B, and you go and you look at the schedule, and player A's got a great schedule, and player B not so much. Well, that might lean you toward taking player A.
Jamie, what do you think?
I think that the Broncos DST's got a great 3-game stretch to start the season. I think that the 49ers have a great opener and a great championship matchup. If you're looking at it from offense and defense, they get the Lions in week 1 and the Texans in week 17. So that could be really good if you're looking at some 49ers. Those were 2 things that stood out to me.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how into it you guys have gotten. I'm wondering if there's a player that just has a brutal start to the season or an incredible start to the season. I don't love – I think – hey, ready for my big prediction, schedule prediction? Mac Jones starting week 5. The Patriots start with the Dolphins, then they're at the Jets, then the Saints and the Bucks. They're going 1-3. They're going to look pretty bad against the Dolphins, the Saints, and the Bucks.
They're favored against Miami, though.
They're going to lose. Week 5 is at Houston. And even if they win, it won't be because Cam Newton was so good. Week 5 at Houston. Week 6, Dallas. Week 7, the Jets. Beautiful time. Get your rookie quarterback in there. They have a tough start. Cam Akers has the Bears, Colts, and Bucks in the first 3 weeks. I hope he gets off to a good start. I hope he can, I hope we don't have to worry about him fending off Darrell Henderson or anything like that. Anything stand out to you, Dave?
I've got a lot of things that stand out to me. I don't know how deep into the weeds you want me to get, but the first thing that seemed weird to me is that there are 4 teams with a week 14 bye. I don't think we've ever said that before, where there's teams that are going to play for the first 13 weeks of the season. Remember, we're moving to an 18-game slate, but the Colts, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Eagles, if you're lazy like me, get a kicker or a DST off of one of those teams, then you don't have to chase them out of your lineup until week 14. And by then, your fantasy team might be so dominant that you won't even care. You'll just put them in your lineup on a bye, and you'll deal with it later. You'll win anyway, or your team will be out of it and you won't care, and you'll cut them at some point or do whatever. But I thought that was interesting. Haven't seen a week 14 bye before. You said Cam Akers has a tough early season schedule. I agree with you. That's one of those tiebreakers that I think works against him. DeAndre Swift just has a tough schedule in general, but I think it's also difficult at the very beginning. Hopefully he can rack up a lot of receptions. But if you want to talk about tough schedules to start the year, the Eagles, the Bucks, the Giants, and the football team. Those are the first 4 games for Atlanta. So for a team that didn't do a whole heck of a lot to get their run game improved, it's kind of a good thing. I think this is a tough start for Mike Davis. I would struggle to say that he's going to have 3 good games out of those 4. He might have 2.
What's their first 4?
It's Philadelphia at home, which that's probably his best matchup. Then he's at Tampa Bay, at the Giants. This is where you go on for about 2 minutes.
They lost a very important piece of their run defense, but
I agree. But they still have a lot of good players up front. And then Washington, who, they're up there with one of the best front sevens in football. So I'm nervous about Mike Davis. Probably not going to be as interested in drafting him at this point. And the Falcons in general kind of got the old Scroogey. They only have 7 games at home. One of their home games is in London. And the NFC only has 8 home games this year. So only 7 home games for the Falcons.
7 home games, 9 road games, 1 neutral game.
Yeah, it might as well be a road game.
Jamie, how do you like a team whose first 4 opponents are the Raiders, Chiefs, Lions, and Broncos? Pretty good.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Raiders, Chiefs, Lions, and Broncos. That would be the Baltimore Ravens starting with them.
Those first 3 games especially, but even that 4th game against Denver, I think the Broncos' pass defense is going to be great. But I don't know if their run defense is going to be equal to the task. So
I
that's
saw,
a
I
real.
saw this today that the Lamar Jackson's highest passing totals each of the last 2 seasons have come in week 1.
Oh, that's interesting. He also doesn't have. I looked at his 2 regular season games against the Chiefs. They weren't very good. So you think high scoring game would be good for him? I still think it is, but recent small sample size history hasn't been good. Jamie, any players that you noticed? Tough or easy? Anything like that? And let me just say, we're doing this kind of reactionary. I haven't even seen all of the schedules. I'm just seeing them as we have this live blog on CBSSports.com, and they're updating it. I've seen most. I haven't seen everyone. So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit because we wanted to get out ahead of it and have some fun with it. And I know it's not the be all end all, and defenses aren't what we expect them to be. There are a lot of injuries and a lot of turnover. So just with that being said, just having fun with it. Is there anything that stood out to you?
I mean, the one thing that we did have time to digest is week 1. And so looking at week 1, because the schedules came out this morning, I thought it was cool that each of the networks were able to broadcast their schedules. So CBS did theirs, Fox did theirs, ABC did the Monday night schedule. I think, if you're looking just from a week 1 standpoint, Trevor Lawrence is definitely interesting. From a streaming standpoint, gets the Texans in week 1. You're going to hear a lot from us throughout the course of the season about playing against the Texans. That's going to be a bad defense. And if they don't have Deshaun Watson, which clearly it feels like they're not going to, the other side of that, the Texans would have been interesting if Watson was playing, or if Watson does play for the Texans. But because Jacksonville's defense is not going to be great. But there's some great week 1 matchups. I think they've sort of highlighted one of the teams, but Atlanta Philly should be fun. That week 1 game, that's one where you're going to probably see a big over under total. And I would say take the over. I also think that Minnesota Cincinnati is going to be a fun one in week 1. That's a defense for the Vikings that's rebuilding and, should be better than we were a year ago. But that offense is going to be fun. And you have some tie-ins there with Justin Jefferson on one side and then the 2 other guys for the LSU offense on the other side with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. So it should be a fun one there. Those are a couple of games that stood out to me. But for the most part, I like to look at week 1. I get a little bit into what the championship playoff schedules can be for teams. For DSTs, you try to look for the first couple of weeks. Like I said, the 49ers were a team that was already a top 5 DST for me. But just looking at their week 1 matchup against Detroit and that rebuilding offense, especially quarterback that they know really well in Jared Goff. And if they're healthy as expected, they could be really good team to start the season. Then again, if you're looking at the close, getting the Texans in week 17 could be really good for that team.
I noticed the Bengals, they have some pretty good pass rushers coming their way. The Vikings with Hunter, the Steelers in week 2, the Packers in week 3.
I think overlook Khalil Mack in week 2.
Khalil Mack's in week 2. I'm sorry. I read the schedule wrong. I thought he was in week 4. Okay, so it goes Vikings, Bears, then Steelers, then Jaguars, then Packers, I believe. That's their first 5 games. They got some pass rushers coming their way. I was about to get to Khalil Mack, but he's actually in week 2. All right, so yeah, there's what defenses scare you, Dave? Which are the ones that you think are going to be bad for fantasy? Bad for fantasy offenses.
We haven't. Which ones are going to be bad for fantasy offenses?
Sorry,
I thought you were asking me what DSTs might I have downgraded because of the schedule.
No. Which teams, when you say they have this opponent? That's
the Rams certainly stand out. The Bucks stand out. Washington certainly stands out. I think Denver. Given I know that their run defense might not be amazing, but it should still be good. Their pass rush should be very good. Their secondary is deep.
We were already talking about Denver as a DST to target, and their first 3 games they get Daniel Jones and then 2 rookie quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah, that's a great one. So
it's a real good situation. Now 2 of them are on the road to start the season, so obviously not ideal, but they should be fine for week 1 going into New York, and then going into Jacksonville. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence plays well in week 1, but for week 2. That's a tough matchup. And then they get the Jets in week 3. So it's, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, 3 straight games. And then they get Baltimore in week 4. But at that point, you should feel pretty good about the Broncos DST.
And I'm not ready to fully say that these defenses are going to be stay away from these DSTs or stay away from these defenses for the matchups. But there's an ABC that I think could be tougher than we think. Arizona, Buffalo, and Cleveland. And especially in Buffalo, take a look at what they have on that D-line and what types of different packages they can put together to rush quarterbacks. They are deep on that D-line. They've had a good secondary, playing a good scheme for a long time. and good linebackers to go with it. That could be a defense that ends up wreaking havoc during the year.
Cleveland's interesting because obviously they get Kansas City in week 1, which is not ideal. But then they come back week 2 and week 3 and they get Houston and Chicago. And so we know Houston could be miserable. And then Chicago is a wild card because it could be Andy Dalton, which we hope it's not, but it could be Justin Fields, obviously. Maybe that's his first start for all we know. So even if he's starting this to open the season, you're still talking about a rookie quarterback. So the Browns DST is probably going to be one that might not get drafted because of their week 1 matchup, but
they will be right after.
Yep.
I think they could have a great defense this year, and I
think so too.
Maybe the Steelers take a step back. They've lost, a number of starters.
Sure,
but
being the biggest one,
right? But they still I feel like they'll still be good. And until they have a bad defense, I'm not going to think they're not going to have a good defense.
Anytime you have one of the premier pass rushers, you have a shot to begin with. So when you have T.J. Watt, and then clearly they still have great linebackers. They're getting Devin Bush back and
good D linemen too,
and the secondary is still going to be very good. So yeah, I think the Steelers are still going to be one of the top DSTs, but that's another one. Week 1 at Buffalo, that's not going to be an easy matchup for them because of what the Bills present offensively and the challenge that they have. So there's going to be some interesting DSTs that I think get dropped after week 1 or might not even get drafted. For people that are looking at the schedule, but like for example, the Colts. I mean, look what their starting in the first 2 games are: Seattle and the Rams. That's not easy. For what those offensive present, but. We saw last year that the Colts DST was fantastic and could still be fantastic again.
Jamie, they've got Seattle and the Rams, and then they've got the Titans and the Dolphins. So maybe that Dolphins game, they'll be ready to roll by then, but they'll have their hands full with the Titans too in week 3.
Yeah. You never know with Tennessee, especially with what they lost, how efficient they'll still be. But it's going to be Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. That's not easy to begin with. So you're right.
Well, I'm trying to see the NFC North. The point I was going to make is the AFC North. Sorry, with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland is that's not a division you want to get matched up with, and that is and this I think is interesting. The AFC West faces the AFC North and the NFC East. So if you think the Giants and the football team have good defenses, and I think they do, then that's a lot of good defenses, and it's kind of interesting for Justin Herbert. He has some pretty tough matchups. He has some pretty easy matchups too, because you Dallas. You get
Cincinnati, the Raiders
and
twice.
But
right. I don't think he's got that great of a schedule.
No, he gets Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the Giants, the Patriots, the Ravens, and Washington. All of those teams were top 8 against quarterbacks last year in fantasy points allowed, except for Cleveland, and we think they're going to be much better.
Yeah.
He also gets Kansas City twice, and Kansas City was a pretty good defense last year. And the Eagles are kind of on the fence. But he does get Dallas, Cincinnati, Houston, Denver twice, and the Raiders twice. Although, Dave, you said
Denver's a tough defense. Denver's going to be a defense that gives Kansas City some fits because they can go deep in their secondary.
This is where you hope, the Chiefs, obviously, with what they've done on their offensive line, the Chargers, what they've done on their offensive line, that these are where those moves help offset some of those great defenses. And that's the hope, because as good as those secondaries are, those playmakers will still get open if the quarterback has time to find them, and that's the hope. So, you got to hope so at this point that great players shine through. And we've said this, time and time again. Go back to last year. We were talking about Deshaun Watson's first 4 games, and just the way that it was supposed to unfold for him. And I believe 3 of them were very impressive performances from him, if I recall. So, it could still be a good.
The first 3? No,
his first 4 games were 22, 16, 20, and 24.
Yeah, and then he went off, but that's a good call of someone that we said. I can think of 2 instances where we knew the schedule was going to be a certain way, and Watson was one of them. Is get through the first 3 weeks, then he's going to be amazing.
So 3 were okay, 1 was terrible.
Todd Gurley had a great schedule, and then we were like sell high after the Carolina game, whatever it was. And he was terrible after the schedule got a little bit tougher. So you can get some nuggets. I just also know, I have to say that there have definitely been times where I've looked at players and been like, whoa, their schedule is brutal, and it hasn't mattered at all. So I'm not gonna make that big of a deal of it. But I do think what we said about the AFC North having good defenses, the NFC East with Washington and the Giants. And I really think the Chargers should be obviously a much better defense this year. They were so injured last year. The Chiefs are solid. Denver, you talked about. How about the Raiders? I mean, do the Raiders have a really bad fantasy schedule?
Yeah,
We're
and their
worried about that.
defense is ugly too.
Yeah,
So
that's one to keep an eye on.
I mean, it's another strike against Josh Jacobs for sure. Tough matchups, and the defense is probably not going to stop anybody.
I mean, Derek Carr, just look at this, because we don't know yet if Miami's pass rush is going to be good based on the moves that they made this offseason. But they Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Miami. After the Dolphins, then you got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack.
Yeah. And
what happened to their offensive line? What did they do to it? Oh, yeah, that's right. They dismantled it.
Yeah.
Does it scare you off Waller at all?
No, I think that helps Waller.
Does it scare you off John Brown? Because this is actually making me think that John Brown, Ravens, Steelers, Dolphins, Chargers, Bears, Broncos, first 6 games. Should I mean,
when you say scare you off John Brown, he's being drafted as a 4th receiver,
right?
So
yeah, maybe you stream him,
especially like where you're getting him. Like I don't think you should be scared of John Brown. Like you should almost welcome John Brown, because if he does anything through those first 4 games when you're not starting him because he's going to be on your bench, then when he gets to a little bit of a lighter schedule, you feel a little better about it.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Yeah, I like John Brown. I mean, I liked Aguilar a lot last year. I think he's a better player than Aguilar. So maybe Rugg steps up, but it's not hard to make a case for John Brown, I think. All right, guys, I'll throw it over to you, Dave. Anything else?
Sure. There are some teams or some players that I would say have a good early schedule, and you guys can check me on it if you want, but I think the schedule is good for Cleveland and their passing game to begin the year. Baker could be someone that you stream. Odell could be someone that you eventually sell high on if he gets off to a good start. Same thing with Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, and then he's got Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Jalen Reagor. We think that could be good.
Give us some of the matchups.
You want to see the matchups?
Not all of them. Give me like the first 4 for these teams.
All right, I got that. So the Cleveland Browns start the season with Kansas City. Should be a high-scoring game. That's in Kansas City. Then it's Houston at home, Chicago at home. And remember, Chicago's defense is Khalil Mack, and then there are some good players elsewhere in that defense, but I think that they take a step back this year. And then at Minnesota, I don't know what that Vikings defense is going to look like. So I think that that's a nice start for Cleveland. And I think Philadelphia, let me get to their schedule. They've got Atlanta in week 1. We know that that's going to be a high-scoring game.
Remember, Atlanta's defense got pretty solid.
Yeah, I know. But they're if you go and look at their defense now, it looks brutal. I don't know where their pass rush is going to come from. I think their 2 starting linebackers gave up a total of like 25 missed tackles last year.
Okay.
Secondary still has a lot of inexperience. The safeties got changed out. So I think that that's a defense that could be ripe. And I think Philadelphia can take advantage. San Francisco secondary, that's a question mark. At Dallas in week 3 and then Kansas City in week 4. So I think that Philadelphia's offense could get off to a good start.
I think on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, we already talked about Cam.
Just another good one for me is Carolina. I mean, I like their start as well. You got the Jets, You got New Orleans.
They're on my list.
Their secondaries, going through a little bit of a change. Houston week 3, Dallas week 4, Philly week 5. I mean, that's a team that if Sam Darnold, you would expect has something to play for in week 1, taking on his former team. That with all the weapons that they have now healthy, obviously McCaffrey being back and Terrace Marshall stepping into, Curtis Samuel's spot, not necessarily role, but spot. That's a team that you can look at and say that could be, some high scoring games and some good production from their top guys.
I agree with that. I would take a long look at the Cardinals schedule, overlook the games against the Rams. And I think that you'll like it. I think it's a good early season schedule for them.
Yeah,
and I think
4,
it's good
5,
overall.
6 is kind of brutal, though, if we're counting on the 49ers defense to be healthy and the Browns defense to be good, because it goes Rams, 49ers, Browns.
I'm not sure. I think they can work around. I agree on the Browns. I think the 49ers, I think the jury's still out on whether their defensive backfield is going to be good.
Agree. But again, you have a pass rush and that changes things. And,
yeah.
Nick Bosa back is going to change that defense in a big, big way.
I hope so for their sake, but the Cardinals did improve their offensive line as well. So I even with that 3-game nightmare, I think that they're still in good shape. They still could have as many as 10 games that are really
nobody's
favorable.
Passing on Kyler Murray or DeAndre Hopkins because of the schedule.
And then dial up the Cowboys schedule. I know week 1's tough, but weeks 2 through 12.
If the Chargers are healthy, though, that's a wild card because their defense could be awesome.
Yeah.
Could be.
So wait, who's week 1 for the Cowboys?
They get
Bucks, right?
Yeah, they get the Bucks.
That's the first game of the year
in the primetime game. Yeah, Chargers is again, it's a wild card, but that's back-to-back road games. It's never easy. And then Philly, Carolina, the Giants, and then the tough one against the Patriots.
Yeah, I think that passing game could really help fantasy managers. It's a nice little perk to Dak and everybody else. Gallup could be a DFS guy.
I think the one thing though that I don't think anybody's changing their opinion on how they're drafting the Cowboys though. Based on what's
nope, just tiebreakers. That's it.
I will point out that Amari Cooper does have a little bit of a history of being pretty bad against great cornerbacks, and that was somebody that I did highlight last year as having tough cornerback matchups. And it's hard to say how that played out just because of the whole Dak thing. But in week 1, he played the Rams, and I think he had 80 yards or something like that, but he has something like 14 targets. So he had 10 catches for 81 yards at the Rams. I mean, that's not really that good. And then he had 2 catches.
I would take that in PPR.
I know, but it's okay. But it's really not a great game. You get that many.
I agree. Yeah. I get what
but yes, it is great in PPR. And look, if they're just going to throw the ball, they're just going to sling it a whole bunch and have a terrible defense, and it probably won't matter because the targets will be there. But
you also got to keep in mind that
he has struggled against top cornerbacks, and he struggled badly against the Giants and the Eagles last year. But really, very little of that was with Dak.
I just wonder though if CeeDee Lamb is as good as he seemed to be last year, they're probably not traveling with a corner on Amari Cooper, whoever they're facing that corner.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, but Lamb's in the slot, right? So if you had an outside,
well, they move Cooper in the slot too. I mean, they move those guys around.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, there was one other team I wanted to get to. Oh, the Dolphins. This is just kind of interesting because
their first two games suck.
Yeah, they got New England, Buffalo, then they get Las Vegas, then Indianapolis and Tampa Bay. I mean, what if they're 1
and Jacksonville and London?
Yeah, but that's like a really tough start to their season. I don't know that it's not like they're going to bench Tua, but
why? They've done it before.
Yeah, for who?
Jacoby Brissett, maybe
he started before. It's not like he's not a starting quarterback.
Maybe they bench Myles Gaskin for Jacoby Brissett. Short yardage, but yeah, New England, Buffalo, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Tampa Bay. There's some 4 good defenses in that stretch. That's pretty much all I got. Unfortunately for Tennessee faces Houston in Week 18, so. Yeah, they lose the Houston matchup fantasy season.
Yeah, Cleveland loses Cincinnati.
One more thing. Philadelphia fantasy postseason if it's weeks 15, 16, 17.
This is a great call.
Washington twice and the Giants for Philadelphia.
Cowboys have Washington twice late in the year too.
Oh. Looks like Washington's going to be pretty busy in the division late in the season.
Just remember though, when you're talking about the fantasy postseason, this is going to be a grind. It's really going to be a long year for these guys. And so, how it's going to be who's healthy at that point, so just I wouldn't necessarily, draft for the postseason or avoid for the postseason because who knows what these teams are going to look like. And remember, if a team has playoff implications or the other side where they don't have playoff, they could be resting guys. So you could see a little bit more of 2 games of guys maybe playing like half or not necessarily going full go because they're getting ready for the playoffs. They want to make sure they're healthy.
Generally speaking, I wonder if players will sit more with an injury that they could theoretically play through in a 17-game season compared to a 16-game season. I know it's only 1 game, but it's each game is slightly less important and the season's longer and you got to get through it. Do teams play it a little? There's no way we can know the answer to this. But
well, it's also, factor in the new playoff format from last year too. Only 1 team gets a bye. So, they could be going a little harder to make sure that they get the bye if it's up for grabs, or if they know they don't have a bye, does the 2 seed matter versus the 3 or however they want to play that out?
All right, I'm going to read some emails here just because we haven't had time to get to those in the other episodes this week. And tomorrow we're doing you might hear this on Thursday anyway. So Thursday we're doing a mock draft review. So let's do these emails really quickly here. Email from Jim in Michigan. Why isn't anyone considering this as a realistic real world trade? How about Aaron Rodgers straight up for Kyler Murray? Or maybe there will be some draft pick compensation, but less draft pick compensation needed, less current players needed. We are living in a fantasy world. How great would it be to watch Aaron Rodgers run that offense?
Why would Arizona do that?
Right.
Take on that salary when Kyler's still under his rookie deal. He's 37. Kyler's what, 23?
Something like that, right?
22? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers makes them a better team right now, but you have to think about what the long-term future is. And the long-term future is Kyler Murray. It's not Aaron Rodgers. So
Plus,
it's
that
fun to think
offense
about,
was
but
built for Kyler.
there's no way that the Cardinals would do that.
I want to read what Jason Lockenfora wrote. He wrote an article that came out, I saw it today, about the NFL quarterback tiers. He does his own quarterback tiers. Tier 3 is the rising stars, and it's Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow. And this is what he wrote about Kyler Murray. He wrote, Kyler Murray's first half of the season had him on a path to MVP consideration and a move to Tier 1, but major questions remain about Cliff's killer offense in Arizona. Far too often, opposing scouts and coordinators would tell me their ability to move the ball came down to Murray going off script and improvising. And everyone on that coaching staff and front office should be feeling the heat if this team once again fails to take a meaningful step to the playoffs. Running around for first downs will only take you so far. Just thought it was just little food for thought out there.
Oh, I mean, this is a big year for the coaching staff there. I mean, you know what? You see what they've done. They go out, as Dave said, they upgrade the offensive line with the trade to get, the center from the Raiders. They go out and they bring in another, veteran presence to help the receiving core. They draft a receiver in Rondale Moore, AJ Green being the veteran. So they've done things the last 2 years to, put Kyler in place to have success. And as JLC said, he was on pace for an MVP season, but he didn't stay healthy. Things weren't there, for him to, take the next step. He's got to take the next step this season. And I think a lot of us are counting on that fantasy wise, but if they don't make a playoff run, I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury might be fired and probably should deserve to be fired.
I wonder if they tell Kyler to run a little less. Like, is that the biggest takeaway that they've got from last year, is that Kyler's got to stay healthy. He's got to be able to stay on the field. He's got to play at 100%. Maybe they ask him to take fewer chances. That would not be good for his fantasy production.
Let's not. I hate that, Dave. I hate everything you just said. Let's take a break. I'm going to yell at Dave during.
Just real quick though, just in terms of tying in Aaron Rodgers' schedule, that's a big factor if you're looking at these defenses, because you're looking at the Broncos. He may be on the Broncos, and you could be saying, "Hey, I'm gonna take the teams that are playing against the Packers all the time if it's Jordan Love as a starter, or maybe Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater."
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more of your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And we are back on Fantasy Football Today. Here we go. We'll finish up with a few more. This is from Thomas Thurman. His name is Thomas Thurman. Let's switch him, flip him around,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hey, Cordero Patterson, Josh Palmer, Justin Hunter, Juwan Jennings, and Josh Malone.
Tennessee Stars.
Yeah. Most recent Vols wide receivers. He loves his Vols. Which current group seems to have a deficiency that we could see a rookie drafted or undrafted emerge from? Potential examples below: Nico Collins, wide receiver for the Texans; Javion Hawkins, running back for the Falcons; or real deep LOL, Kenny Yeboah, tight end for the Jets. Well, I think
the running back for the Falcons is interesting just because of what their running backs coach said. I forget his name, so I apologize. But I know he spoke to the media the other day, and he was saying that he likes the group. And we know it's a group of no names. He said that Cordero Patterson is more of a gadget player. Mike Davis was somebody, I guess, that he tried to recruit out of high school to wherever he was coaching in college. He said Kadri Allison could still be explosive. And I'm going to get the kid's name wrong. So who did
Javion Hawkins?
Javion Hawkins, the undrafted rookie free agent.
Yeah.
A lot of people are bringing up that he could be this year's James Robinson, which makes sense. He's not the same type of player if you watch him, but the circumstances are there, an open backfield essentially, but it's Mike Davis's job to lose. And if he screws up, and as Dave said, the schedule's not going to be easy. So if he screws up, they're going to give other guys opportunities. So that's a name to definitely keep an eye on. If your rookie draft and is 3 rounds or more, and you get to round 3, like we just did a 3-round rookie mock draft on Tuesday, and you see some of the names in round 3, and you're like, okay, good player, good opportunity, but may take some time. That's a guy to, put on your radar. Certainly if you go to 4 rounds or more, that's definitely a guy you want to consider drafting, because even if it's just a couple weeks into the season, you have to move on, or he doesn't make the team in the preseason, you can move on from that. But if he does get a chance to maybe be number 2 on the depth chart and something happens to Mike Davis, there's a good chance for him to have some success.
He's just really small. And he's got really small hands. So speed kills, there's no doubt about it. I just wonder, what would happen to this guy if he was consistently getting 12 touches per game as a running back. He makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be a star, but he could be a contributor. And
he could,
for what
sure.
you could be looking at as a flex, if he's as our buddy P. Prisco likes to say, a typical airback. That's something that could certainly help him.
He could do that, but I think that would be like all that he could do. Jared Dokes, if I'm going to go deep on this, Jared Dokes is a late round rookie pick by the Dolphins. Physical running back, has good balance, not fast, but maybe someone that could end up swiping some touchdowns away.
Remember Sergeant Dokes from Dexter?
No.
Yeah, well, it's a great character. This is from Patrick in a small Jersey Shore town.
Asbury Park.
Ah, okay.
Bam Bam Bigelow.
I'm in a 10-team PPR keeper league. We can keep one player from our previous draft, except for players drafted in rounds 1, 2, and 3. Who should I keep? Terry McLaurin in round 6 or Darren Waller in round 7?
Waller.
Yeah,
Waller.
that's probably the better way to go.
Waller, shot caller, brawler. This is from Vaughn in Virginia. Dear Michael, Andy, Jim, and Creed. Why does everybody love Creed? Since I started listening to every episode of FF Today, I've won 2 of 3 fantasy titles.
Yes.
But now I have an important keeper decision to make, which I'm sure I'll botch. Nah, we got you. Half PPR. Keep them plus 2 rounds every year for as long as you want. I have the 10th pick, so I'm going to keep Kamara at 10. Here are my other options. Kamara, 11th overall. Cam Akers.
Keep him for 10th and 11th overall.
Kamara and did I say Kamara?
You did.
Sorry. Hopkins. Kamara and Hopkins in the first and the second rounds. So 10th and 11th overall. Cam Akers, 4th round. Lamar Jackson, 8th round. This is a half PPR league. Pick 2.
It's a 10-team league?
Yes.
Yes.
So obviously you keep Lamar Jackson because you could still keep him for...
You get him for 6 next year. Yeah.
Okay. So Kamara, you guys on board with Kamara?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, from Jamie from the Great White North. Subject line, Daniel Jones traded for what? Real-time reaction. Hey, Ed, and Eddie. This question has nothing to do with Daniel Jones. Thanks for the tip, Heath. Yes, said in the subject line, and I'll read it. Deep 16-team tight end premium PPR Dynasty League. Here are my running backs. Jacobs, Zach Moss, Jeff Wilson, LaMichael Pirine, DJ Dallas, Divino Zigbo, Benny Snell, JJ Taylor, Le'Veon Bell. As you can all see, it's bad. Really, really bad. It's my only weakness, though. Okay, I ended up trading my 1.6 rookie draft pick and my 2022 first-round pick for 1.1 so I can take Najee Harris. Is this a good deal for me to have made? It is tight end premium, by the way. Tight end score 1.5 points. So should I take Kyle Pitts? He has... Who's his tight end? Hunter Henry.
I'm taking Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Even with his running backs?
With his running backs.
I mean, if Kyle Pitts is everything that he could be, that's Travis Kelce.
No-brainer. Right.
For the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And listen, Najee Harris could end up being, the next Ezekiel Elliott, somebody like that.
I'd like to know what else he has on his team to maybe make another trade.
Oh, well, he told us.
Like, what are his wide receivers and quarterbacks?
Oh, I was going to say we're out of time. Hurts and Tannehill. Diggs, Kupp, Beckham, Marquise Brown, DJ Moore, Henry Ruggs.
Maybe you can move one of those receivers.
Yeah, I would say like that's the type of, if you can do it, you're looking at some of these either questionable starters, Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds, James Conner, whichever one you prefer, Melvin Gordon potentially. Somebody that can give you some production.
Carson, would you put Carson in there?
I mean,
I'm thinking Dynasty.
Carson, I think that's the top of the heap. But
yeah,
that's the type of move I think you're trying to do is try and trade Odell for Chris Carson if you can. Something along those lines.
Well, that is it for our schedule recap episode. We will talk to you on Thursday with Fantasy Football Today, a draft review, a post NFL draft mock draft review. Stay tuned for that. Thanks to Dave and Jamie and Ben Schrader.
I won that draft.
Yeah, Najee Harris, 33rd overall. You'll never see it again. You will never see it again. See you later, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you Thursday.